Thank you. We are on the record in Cherokee versus Shaw, case number D565672. Counsel, your appearances, please.
Joe Houston, partner, 1440 for Mr. Cherokee.
Rena, it's my partner, 7963 here with the Shaw.
Okay, thank you. This is the time set for a status. I read the status papers. Is there any argument?
The supplemental points of authorities I filed, I think, clearly points out that at this point in time, there shouldn't be any further discovery, and the case should just end at this point in time.
I agree that discovery should be ongoing. I think it's necessary for me to have the ability to look for the documents. I know you took Mr. Taraki's deposition, but I need some way to be able to validate whether he's telling the truth or not. Obviously, if we're just going to take a participant at his word, then there would be no need for discovery rules. Frankly, we've engaged in this dispute prior to today's hearing, even prior to the order we don't have the order from the April 21st hearing. But I wanted to start with a request for documents. Mr. Houston insisted I start with the deposition. I think that somebody reviewed the hearing video, and it was suggested maybe a deposition would be helpful. After the fact, I thought, well, really, the documents, the proof was in the documents, but I was told to start with the deposition, and so I did the deposition, but I need the documents. I mean, I'm looking for, if Mr. Cherokee travels, and in his deposition it says that when he travels, he uses primarily credit cards to pay for that travel. The credit cards are going to show if he's, when he's leaving, when he's coming back. I mean, if he's flying on an airline, I mean, there's going to be an email confirmation. Every time you book something, you get a confirmation. If you book a hotel room, you get a confirmation. I mean, that's the only stuff that I'm looking for. I know Mr. Houston is complaining that I had 98 requests for documents, but it's essentially just the same request over and over and over and over. Each reference of travel that he made on his Facebook, I asked for the email confirmation for the lodging, for the hotel, for the rent-a-car, and then I asked for the proof of the payment, essentially. So I'm looking for either the bank statement or the credit card statement. I mean, I don't need all of them. If I have the proof of payment, then I don't need the rest. And maybe there's some dispute if my requests are overburdensome, but Mr. Hughes can call me about that. Like he says, look, I made this request for the travel in Serbia, but Ava was with him in Serbia, so what's the difference? And I would say, well, show me a proof of a picture of her in Serbia, or show me the proof of her airline ticket going to Serbia, and I won't need any further documents about the trip to Serbia. He says that I requested credit cards for his wife. Well, I mean, if he calls me about it, it's really a discovery dispute, not that should go in front of the Discovery Commissioner, but it wouldn't be necessary, because I'd say, okay, well, let's start, I'll strike the request that includes, credit cards for his wife. But nonetheless, we're in the middle of the process. The fact that we filed a motion when we think that he was out of town so much that he wasn't really taking care of his daughter has little to do with whether his business is closed in Tennessee or not, which I don't know if it is or if it isn't. He says that it is, but for him, for the court to consider the fact that he may have cured the problem, I mean, I think is really not the issue, because we filed a motion when we thought there was a problem. So,
what time frame are you looking at, Mr. Cernich?
Well, I did a request for production of documents. They would expire on around October 10th.
What's the travel time frame that you're looking at? The last year? What?
Oh, I started the travel from. Let me look at the request for documents. I didn't go back prior to the custody hearing. I asked for in and around starting on June 1st, 2019, because I think that the custody trial concluded just prior to that. So I was going from that date, to whatever the date was that I filed my motion. I mean, that it had to be before April 21st. I mean, so I can't remember the date that I filed the motion, but I didn't go 4 years back, 5 years back, even 2 years back. I went back to June 1st,
Well, I mean,
2019.
there's no point in doing that. I understand that you're talking about a change since the last custodial order. So as the court made a decision, you're going forward pursuant to McMonigal at the time you filed your motion. So, I think it's really needs to be streamlined instead of casting that wide net. And I tried to make that impression on counsel. Just give him, Mr. Houston, just give him the travel itineraries from every airline that your client flew on from June to the time he filed the motion.
That's fine, but the main issue of their whole motion, even in their reply, points out that he has to go to Tennessee for business all the time, and that business is closed and moved to Clark County, so it just isn't even relevant anymore. That was their whole big push, is that he has to have this new business in Tennessee he's going all the time, which the deposition showed wasn't true, but in any event, if you want me to get the airline travel documents, I can provide.
Let the judge talk, okay? Let the judge talk, please.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Now, just a second. All right. The travel itinerary from the last custodial order, I'm taking his word for it that was June, but it is what it is. When I made the last decision, to the time he filed his motion, every airline that he flew on, just for him, and if the child accompanied him, then the child's travel itinerary for every airline. No credit card statements, no wife credit card statements, no rental cars, no hotels. Just, you need to know the leave dates and the comeback dates. And if he moved his business to Clark County, just give him whatever document that shows that he's relocated the business, like a new business license or a new address or something like that. That's all that needs to be done.
Well, I'll interject if you don't mind. If he provides me a travel itinerary, but selectively leaves travel out, we would never know that. In other words, we're taking him at his word. And that was the purpose of my seeking a request to show the payment of the travel, because then I'm guessing that if whatever source he's using to pay for one mode of travel, he's probably using to pay for other travel. So that if I get those credit card statements, I say, okay, here's the travel that he told us about. Oh, but wait a second, what's this other payment to this other airline, which would be the one that perhaps he's trying to hide, if he's hiding something. All we know is we found stuff on Facebook that he's traveling a lot, and my client says he's out of town all the time. So I think that the proof of payment of the travel is significant to track this down as the travel itinerary.
And Judge, again, this is ridiculous. They're asking for all of his credit card statements to pry into his life. They're asking for all of his business. He's not even the owner, 100% owner of these businesses. So he's supposed to provide documents of businesses of other individuals and other people and other business activities, which they have no right to have, which no way they should even remotely have. So
I don't want you getting into all of his credit card statements. I think that's an invasion. And you're saying right off the bat, we took his deposition under oath, but he could be lying to us. So,
Absolutely.
You either have the proof or you don't. So if you don't have the proof, and I gave you the ability to take his deposition, I gave you the ability to conduct some restricted discovery, I'm not going to cast that net out there to give you enough time to hang a rope around his neck. If you don't have the proof, you don't have the proof. Okay? You had the Facebook pages, you took his deposition. I assumed that you had every Facebook page, and you said, what about this trip? What about this trip? What about this trip? What about this trip? You had all of that, and you took his deposition under oath.
I did it.
That's enough.
And he told me, these pictures were posted late. They're all the same trip. This trip, I didn't really take. I drove there. I mean, that's the purpose of the
So you don't have the proof is what you're saying. That's all I'm going to order. That's all I'm going to order.
I can get the proof.
I don't have the proof for your motion. And I'm not going to order that this man turn over all of his credit card statements so you can go through them with a fine-tooth comb. You took the Facebook pages about deposition, and he testified at his deposition. And now you're assuming that he's lying. And I'm not going to go down that road with you. I'm not going to help you do all this discovery, Mr. Zernich. That's it. Travel, flight, hearings, and that's all you're going to get. Not hotel, not car, nothing of the sort.
Then let's restrict it to the travel itinerary, but at least make him show the proof of the travel itinerary.
Yes,
come on,
Mr. Houston, that's it.
Thank you.
All right, you notice your motion.